What's up, guys? Kris, Gethin here, back with the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. What's been happening, kids? It's been quite a fun last couple of weeks for me, filming the muscle building video trainer. I've suffered a little bit of central nervous system fatigue, and that's because my brain is willing, but my body is getting old, I think. But anyway, never mind, that's what it does. We condition our resolve every week and keep coming back. A lot of the time we question ourselves when we're in the gym, going through arduous tasks. What am I doing this for? How did I get myself into this? But then you quickly think, I got to get myself out of it. And then you do, and you feel like you've succeeded at something today. But that is not the title or the subject matter that we're going to be discussing today. I want to talk about the abuse that yourself or others around you put themselves through. When you think of abuse, you think of domestic abuse or people actually cutting their wrists or forearms or anything like that. I'm talking about internal abuse, about what we put in our bodies with food, energy drinks, alcohol, trans fats. You name it, we do it, unfortunately. So anyway, before we start with this, if you do like these podcasts that I'm putting out there, please do leave me a review. Please share with others, because the only way that I'm going to be able to spread this word is by you. It's hopefully going to work out to be a crowdsource of inspiration to spread the word of the Knowledge and Mileage podcast that does prioritize you, your health, your transformation, and obviously inspiration for those around you. So, self-abuse. I'm going to start off with an analogy before I get into this. If you imagine this, you were given the most amazing house or mansion, let's call it a mansion, that you could ever dream of. It had every single detail within the house, within the roofing, the trimmings, the garden, the high ceilings, the open plan, absolutely everything down to the appliances, the granite top, however you see it. It could be a setting within a woodland, it could be a cabin, it could be just a cool-ass architectural design that's very contemporary. However, it is what you'd always dreamed of. You've won the lottery here because I'm giving it you. You have got this mansion exactly how you wanted it. But this is what you start to do over the coming days, weeks, months, years. You start pulling up the floorboards. You smash out a couple of windows here and there. You take a couple of the cupboards' doors off. You start taking their roofing tiles out, the plumbing. You set fire to a couple of rooms. Now, you'd never, ever do this, would you? Why would you do that? It'd be insane. But millions and millions of people around the world do that to something much more valuable than any mansion. They do it to their bodies. They do it to their health, their mental well-being. They destroy themselves every single day with the foods that they consume. If you look at a lot of the foods that are out there that are either, trans fats, artificial colors, artificial flavors, ACEs, dyes, a lot of ingredients you cannot pronounce, so I've no idea how your body can recognize it. Unfortunately, you cannot rely on a USDA to approve foods with your health at the top of their interest. You have to rely upon yourself. You have to back yourself up with the knowledge to understand what all these foods do to you. You look at the mass production of meat today. There's no wonder they have to pump a lot of beef and chickens and fish now with antibiotics because they are so contained within themselves. They get ulcers, they get disease, they get abscesses, there's E. coli, salmonella, you name it. So they have to pump all these animals full of these antibiotics because they're in very tight contained units, tanks, cages, and then they're given obviously antibiotics, and they're genetically modified, so they grow extremely fast. Believe me, I grew up on a farm, and I know what they do on some other farms. I've seen chickens grow so fast within like 4 weeks, their feet are the size of an adult's. Their legs and feet are the size of an adult chicken. However, they've got this like very small chick-like body, and now their body has to catch up to its legs. You know, these are genetically modified animals, and we eat these animals. But the animals, that's a big problem for sure. But look at all the other foods that's available to us. And unfortunately, it should start at the school system, but it does not. It does not. Do you know that 70% of antibiotics and pesticides, let's say antibiotics to begin with, in meat is fed to kids from animals? So 70% of the antibiotics in the world are not fed directly to people when you go to the hospital or when you go to the pharmacy. It's fed to animals, 70%. And then our kids and ourselves eat those antibiotics. 1.2 billion pounds a year. 1.2 billion pounds of antibiotics. So that's like a 5-pound bag to every kid, to every human. If you think about having a 5-pound bag of antibiotics and then tip it on the floor, that is what you are consuming every year. So don't believe that your USDA has our best interest. You know, we are no longer the creator of food. There aren't as many farmers as there were 100 years ago, 200 years ago, that were proper creators of food. We were creators of food. We had our own veggie patch. Like when I was a kid, we had our own veggie patch. I used to wake up in the morning, and before school, I used to go outside and pick my own lettuce and make my lettuce sandwiches. I absolutely loved it. Loved nothing more than lettuce sandwiches. You know, completely different to the high-protein diet that I have now, but, you know, that's what I love doing. Now, we are no longer creators of food. We're just purely consumers. We consume everything that is on the shelf, that comes in wrappers, that come in packets, that come in plastic tubs, come in cans. Everything other than the natural, organically created foods that comes from the ground. We don't recognize a lot of these foods. If you look at a box, for instance, let's talk about a Twinkie. If you look at a Twinkie, if you look at the ingredients on the back of that box, don't look at the box to see what's on the front, you would have no idea that any of those ingredients pointed towards this being a Twinkie. There's 44 ingredients in it, some that you can't pronounce, but it's a Twinkie. It's the same if you look at a lot of these TV dinners, a lot of, so-called quote-unquote healthy TV dinners, and it's just a roast dinner. And you look on the front and you see the carrots, you see the beef, you see the gravy, you see the Brussels sprouts, you see the peas. There's about 6, 7, 8 things that you see there. However, you look on the ingredient list on the back, there's like 88 ingredients. What the hell is in there, and what are we doing just to be a little bit more convenient is basically destroying our body. Do you know we are performing the largest terrorist act in the world because we kill more people via the food that we deliver, that we consume every single day. People dying of heart disease, diabetes, obesity, thyroid function or collapse. There's so many issues that happens as a direct correlation of the consumption. They say that 1 in 3 people, or kids, I should say, born since the age of 2000 in their later life will become diabetics. 1 in 3. So basically, this generation could potentially have a shorter lifespan than we do. Shame on us. Shame on us that we allow this. Have you ever been to people's houses and let's say if you're a parent, I'm not a parent, but I've seen it so many times so I can speak on this angle, and I'm sure you'll nod your head and agree in acknowledgement. How many times that you go to somebody's house, it could be a relative's house, could be a friend's house, and they'll see your kids and go, hold on, I've got something for them. And they'll go into the kitchen, and they're not going to come out with an apple. They're not going to come out with a banana. It's definitely not going to be a plate full of chicken and rice, pasta, whatever. It's going to be sweets. I've got something for you. You've been a good girl. Here's a chocolate bar. here's some candy, here's some candy floss, here's some Twinkies. And that's what we do. Basically, what we are doing is slowly taking time away from that person's life. Like, don't talk to me about materialistic possession, and that's important. Don't talk to me about money as being important. Something that you will never, ever, ever get back is time. And what we do is take away people's time. Like, I get pissed off if I go to meet somebody and that one person's late. I used to get very pissed off, I should say. I don't get so pissed off now. It's probably a little bit more frustrated. But as long as I'm on time, that's all that matters. But I do not like people wasting my time. That's why I don't like living in large cities. Like, I've lived in Sydney, lived in London, lived in Delhi, lived in Mumbai, lived in LA. And the one thing that destroyed me in any of those cities, and the reason that I moved away, was purely because of the traffic. And that has taken away time from me that I can never, ever get back. But what we do when we feed these children all these foods that cause an inflammatory response that could promote diabetes, obesity, that can obviously, with these inflammatory responses can lead to chemical reactions in the brain that could cause depression, bipolar-like symptoms, suicidal thoughts. We are taking away their time. And the relatives, the friends that think they're doing a good thing are taking away time from you and your kids. Don't do it to yourself, and definitely don't do it to each other. And it all comes down to the education of food. We go to school, and what do we learn? I'm not bagging about school altogether, that you shouldn't go and get an education, but we learn about history, we learn about art, religious education, metalwork, woodwork, whatever it may be. But do we learn about food? Ask any 3, 4, 5-year-old, I challenge you, ask them, do they know how a lettuce is grown? Does it come from a lettuce bush? What about carrots? Do they come from a carrot tree? Or does it come from the ground? A lot of children have no idea what they're consuming. Fortunately, I came from an upbringing where, we had blackberries that we would pick off the bush. As I would walk home from school down my lane, I would grab some hazelnuts and crack them with my teeth. And then, I'd, get my lettuce sandwiches in the morning. I'd go out and pick my lettuce. But how many children have that opportunity? Maybe there's no gardens. Maybe, I don't know, parents are too busy. However, we should at least educate the children on what they should be eating and how and what it does to them. Why is, for example, a big gulp cheaper than water? You can go to a gas station, you could go to a McDonald's, and you could get yourself this massive soda, but it's cheaper than water. I'll tell you why. Because the government they subsidize certain sizes, especially when it comes to school dinners. And the more sugar, the cane sugar industry is huge, soybean oil industry is huge, the canola oil, the more they can subsidize, the more they're going to put out, the cheaper it's going to be. Look at the amount of marketing that goes behind Coca-Cola, McDonald's, all these bad foods. Cereals, which are basically desserts. That's all they are. Have these cereals in the morning because they're fortified with calcium. They're fortified with vitamin B, vitamin D. Great, healthy, strong bones. Or it's whole grain. But look at the amount of sugar that you get in these cereals. It's basically the same as having dessert at breakfast. You start the kids off and yourself with a bad habit immediately. You create this insulin response with sugar, and when that sugar declines, the insulin response is still craving. It wants more sugar. It's a chemical reaction in your brain. Okay, a lot of people say it's emotional. It goes past that. It's not as if you can go and get the discipline. You just need to say no. You're weak. It's not that. It goes further. It becomes a chemical reaction to the brain, and it becomes addicting. They've actually done studies with rodents and with humans, but this particular study where they've had heroin and they've had sugar-sweetened water. Let's say soda. That's what it's going to be. It's soda. And after a while, the rat would not go to the heroin. It was addicted more so to the sugar-sweetened liquid, which was a soda. That's how addicting it is. And of course, they want us to be addicted. A friend of mine said to me, when he was talking to his child about Christmas or something like that. No. Is about what do you want when they're out at the supermarket or something. And he says, and he was a little kid, he's like 3 years old. He says, I want a Coca-Cola. And the father said, why do you want a Coca-Cola? He says, because Father Christmas or Santa drinks it. And that's one of the great things about the advertisement. You know, Coca-Cola is advertised on the side of those trucks with Santa drinking cola so they can get the kids very, very young addicted to this sugar hazard. That is the biggest terrorist act in the world today. So, unfortunately, you're not going to see a water that's been advertised or water cheaper than a big cup. It's crazy. And whilst I'm talking about McDonald's, have you seen the shape of some of those chicken McNuggets that you see at McDonald's? Do any of them even look anything similar to a chicken? Did you know in some chicken nuggets, or, depending where you purchase it from, but let's talk about fast food chains, less than 2% of that chicken McNugget is chicken. So what the hell are we putting in our bodies? Whatever it is inside, I don't even want to know. It's filled with sodium a lot of the time so they can expand it with water and any other preservatives, liquids. So unfortunately, you have whatever's inside that, plus they coat it in deep fried fat. It's your breadcrumbs. So now you're having this toxic environment in your body with trans fats. I wonder how your body is going to like that. Well, unfortunately, it becomes adaptive to it. You've seen, what was it called? The McDonald's documentary where that guy went and ate Supersize Me, that was it. Remember at the very beginning when he ate McDonald's, he hadn't eaten McDonald's for years, and he was violently sick the first time he had it? But then after several weeks, the only time that he felt good was at the actual time that he was eating McDonald's. In between time, at night, in the morning, he felt shit. He was dealing with that hangover, not the hangover, the craving. He needed it. And the only way that he could release and satisfy his craving was actually eating it. So to begin with, the body rejects it. This is not natural. It's a toxin. I want it out of me. But then as you keep feeding something addictive like this, it only feels good once you're actually feeding it, and then you are hooked for life. You know what I mean? It's not good. So remember, a lot of people will argue the fact, but organic and pasture-raised and grass-fed is so much more expensive. No doubt, it is more expensive. However, wouldn't you prefer to invest in the food that you eat right now, invest in your health, instead of having to spend money later in medical bills, going to visit the doctor, taking drugs for all the damage that you've put within your body throughout your lifetime? You have been given the greatest gift. If you're listening to this, chances are you're in a westernized culture and you have access to phone, computer, the gym, people around you. You've got good health, you've got all your limbs, you're happy. Then why would you want to destroy that? There are people around the world that would beg to be in your position and beg to have your lifestyle. However, what do you do with it? You take advantage of it and start slowly destroying it with the foods that you put into your body that are full of pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, Roundup. We're surrounded by EMF wet rays as it is, and we just continue to destroy ourselves every day with a McDonald's, with a chocolate, the bad high-calorie drink that we get from Starbucks. We do it all the time. If you cannot afford to go for pasture-raised, because free-range, do not get me started on free-ranged eggs. That is not free-ranged. It's just a marketing ploy. You need to look at actually, like I said, pasture-raised, grass-fed, etc. But if you cannot afford that, then please, as you get your vegetables, just wash them. As you get your fruit, scrub it down. You can actually get a vegetable brush, and the friction will help get rid of a lot of the pesticides on there. And, if you're going to choose a fish, try to go for the smaller fish, not the larger fish. The larger fish will generally have a little bit more mercury in it. Go for the smaller fish, like your sardines. Your mackerel is a good fish. Unfortunately, a lot of the fish today is farmed, and they're put in very, very, very tight units. It's the fastest growing industry now that has surpassed beef industry, is these fish farms, and they are so tightly contained. They're fed, pellets. And a lot of it is like soy, different types of foods that they eat in in nature, in the ocean. So now their omega-3s used to be very high, and their omega-6s were low. That ratio has completely changed, especially when you're looking at white fish like the tilapia, like your cod. So, you need to, unless they are wild caught, Alaskan wild caught salmon, for instance, you need to really take a look at what you're eating and choose maybe the smaller fish. And when you go into your meat, if you can get it locally, if you can Google to see if there's any farms within your area, there's a company here around Boise called Cunningham Farms that I get my meat from. At the moment, I'm going through a lot of organ meat. I was just speaking to the gentleman this afternoon. He's sending me tongue. He's sending me heart. I've been eating liver this week. And I'm actually going to eat an elk heart tomorrow. I know all you vegans out there are spitting down the earpiece at the moment. But, it's very, very high, densely packed with nutrients and very low in fat. It is much, much cheaper as well. Why? Because nobody out there eats it. If you're going to go for liver, I do generally will go for like a lamb, because they aren't generally mass produced like beef, with the risk of antibiotics. But you can go for beef, like I said, just make sure it's grass fed. And if you can go wild when it comes to your proteins, then you'd go for your elk or your bison or anything like that. But again, it has to be completely grass-fed. Unfortunately, there's some that say grass-fed, but they've been brought up on grain all their lives, and then just before they're slaughtered, they're allowed access to grass. So I do suggest that you do your research there in order, and it's the same with the supplement industry. Make sure that your supplements are Prop 65 Act certified for any heavy metal contaminants, that they're Informed Sport and Informed Choice certified of any banned substances, that they're third-party tested. So not only does the custom manufacturer test all those supplements, but you actually test the manufacturer. And one thing that I always say, ensure that your ingredients, for the most part, are patented, because then they have been certified, they've been studied, they are efficaciously dosed, and all the studies, research back up that these are safe, they're pure, and they're readily available for performance and your health, because a lot of these ingredients have to be hygienically made. They have to be in temperature controlled units. There's a lot that goes into a patented ingredient that doesn't always go into a generic ingredient. So be very careful when it comes to the consumption of your supplements. So, cheaper isn't always the way to go. That's why with Caged Muscle, we put a lot of time and emphasis in it and work on very, very sharp margins. And that's why you'll never see me in one of those mansions that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast. Anyway, guys, hopefully that has given you something to ponder, to think about. I do suggest you get onto your computer and Google the foods that you consume, the supplements that you eat, and look to healthy alternatives. As I said, if you can find farmers local to you, grass-fed animal produce, and the same with your vegetables, ensure that your eggs, these chickens are actually out in the pastures, because they are supposed to forage for insects, and that's what gives their eggs, especially the egg yolk, the very high value of these omega-3s that generally are not there anymore. So remember, you are what you eat. Whatever you consume, you become that food. So if you're putting a lot of crap, adulterated food into you, you are going to become that. You only have one vessel, one carcass. Feed it well. This is the Knowledge and Mileage podcast. I'm Kris Gethin. If you do like this podcast, please do comment in my socials. Please do leave a review, and even more so, please share it. Thank you very much. Until next week, peace.